Welcome to Unapologetically Sensitive, where you can learn, relate, laugh, and maybe even live a bolder, brighter life. I'm your host, Patricia Young. This is a weekly podcast where we explore the strengths we have because of our sensitivity and some of the challenges it poses as well. The information in this podcast is not a substitute for help from a licensed mental health professional. Hey there, the creatives, healers, sensitives, and deep thinkers. Welcome. I'm really glad you're here today. So I have a confession to make. Steve brought Gracie to the groomer, and I don't know if they're going to have questions, so I did not turn the ringer on my phone off, which is really not great for recording, but I just want to get this done, and you know my motto, done is better than perfect. How are y'all doing? I am going to talk a little bit at some point during this about just what I'm noticing with COVID and doing a check-in with you, but this episode is one of, I think, 3 or 4 parts that I recorded with Melissa and Shelly last fall after they had taken the Online HSP course. We did it in video format, so if you actually want to see what Shelly and Melissa look like, you can go to my website at unapologeticallysensitive.com, click on the HSP groups page, and if you go down to the videos, all 4 parts of the interview are there. But this is one part of the interview, and they're going to be sharing part of what their experience and what they got out of the course. And really, I was really surprised that when we did this interview, even though it's been quite some time ago, there were some things that they said that they were able to articulate something that I hadn't been able to express. And so I think it's a really great episode. It's pretty short, at least their part is. I want to give you a heads up about a couple of things. We talk about Shelly being frozen when we come on, and because it was video, you're not seeing that. There's some issues with buffering. The sound is a little bit wonky in parts. I've done the best that I can to clean it up, but I always like to give you a heads up about it. I want to tell you a little bit about Shelly and Melissa. Their bio is in the show notes, and I'm just doing this from my own memory and experience. The last 2 episodes that came out that were the best of the podcast, Shelly is an editor, video editor, audio editor. She does amazing work, and so she remixed the intro so that the music isn't quite as loud, and she put all the pieces together, added in a new intro. If you're looking for a podcast or video editor, I would totally recommend Shelly. And Melissa ended up doing some tech help for me with my business. She built out my secondary website, and we have a weekly meeting where she helps me with my business stuff. She also has done, I may get this wrong, but she's done peer counseling before. And there are times when I'm just a hot mess, and Melissa is beautiful at holding space for me and allowing me to be where I need to be. So if you are looking for any tech help, I don't know if I should call it peer counseling. She's not a licensed therapist. She is an HSP. She's done her work. She's a moderator in the online Facebook group called Unapologetically Sensitive. She's someone that I've really come to count on. And it takes me a long time to really warm up and allow people to see me, if I'm, depending on the nature of the relationship. And I just don't have enough good things to say about both of these women. I have gotten together a survey that Melissa helped me with that is going to help me get to know you a little bit better. My other goal is to get some advertisers for the podcast to monetize so that I can outsource the editing and really do the things that I love. I'm kind of in a place right now that it's just a lot of work, and I really could use some help. I would love to get to know who you are, a little bit about you, what your interests are, if there are topics that you want to hear for the podcast. This also will help me in speaking with advertisers to let them know a little bit about what the demographics of the podcast listeners look like, who y'all are. If you go to my website, unapologeticallysensitive.com, I think what we're going to do is on the contact page at the bottom, there's going to be a little button that says take the survey. And we may build out a second page that also is just called survey. This is completely anonymous. You can choose to answer some, all of the questions, whatever you're comfortable with. It's private. The only thing that I'm going to do is to gather this data to help me figure out how I can serve you better. I ask about if you're interested in having merchandise. I will figure out a way to get logos with mugs and shirts or whatever you're interested in. So this is just trying to figure out how to connect a little bit better with you. So for now, we're putting this survey up. If you listen to this in the future, this is going to come out in August of 2020. If you listen to this in the future and you go to the website and that isn't there, I'm not sure how long we're going to keep this survey up for, but for now, it's going to be up. The other thing that I'm going to be doing is updating the page with the HSP groups. Because of COVID, my website designer, not Melissa, they're just slow. It's taking them longer to get to things. So I'm hoping that by the time you hear this, everything will be updated on the website. But I am going to be launching, I'm thinking 2 of the online HSP groups have had enough people express interest. The benefit and what I've seen come out of these groups, I think we've run them, I don't know why I say we, I'm the one, it's me and the mouse in my pocket. I've run 4 sets of groups. Jen and I did the beta group. I ran one in the fall, one in January, and we're just having our last the Imperial we. I have the last meeting coming up this week, and I have just seen some amazing transformation. Unfortunately, I had an interview scheduled with somebody who took the course and has made some amazing changes in their lives, and it was partially due to taking the course, she said, and we needed to reschedule her interview. But I am going to be having some upcoming interviews so that you can kind of see not only what happens in the course, but what kinds of things have happened after. I will come on at the end to talk a little bit more about the courses and how you can get more information. But now, why don't I just let you listen to Melissa and Shelly's little interview talking about their experience taking the course. So now, on to the show.
Hey there, it's Patricia, and I'm here with a couple of people who just finished one of the rounds of the Online HSP course, and they've been gracious enough to come on and talk about their experience. We're making a couple of these clips. We've not had this conversation before. It looks like Shelly's screen is frozen up, so we don't have a mannequin there. There is a real person. So we're just going to be talking a little bit about the course here. I'm curious to know, how was it being in a group of other people, being online? Like, what were your thoughts before you took the course, and then what was your experience once you actually had the experience?
Do you have any thoughts, Shelly?
I keep freezing up.
You're good right now. Yeah.
I guess. Am I good? Okay. So my thoughts before the course and then after?
Yeah, being in a group of people and being online.
Before joining the course, I basically listened to your podcast and felt somewhat like relieved that I wasn't the only one. I wasn't really sure what an HSP was, or even if I was one.
Mm-hmm.
But over time, I've learned that through, more listening through your podcast and then joining the course, that I'm not alone. That was a huge thing for me, because I think it sort of tends to magnify when you feel like you're alone, and like, what's wrong with me, and why am I getting so upset, or why do I have these feelings? Being in the group with your leadership and the camaraderie of the other participants, other people in our group, I felt like I finally belonged somewhere where it was more than just sharing your stories or problems. It was about receiving support, offering support, and really showing up in your authentic way. And I feel like that is carrying that into other areas of my life. It feels good. It's still work in progress, but
it always will be.
I feel like, yeah.
It's an ongoing process.
Yeah. So it's still, like I said, I'm integrating a lot of the things that we've discussed. It's been really, really helpful to know that I'm not alone out there, and just being able to navigate, each feeling or situation kind of just like one step at a time.
Yeah. Well, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I would have never taken this course. I am an incredibly frugal person, downright cheap. And my husband decided to take this course, and I was like, hey, I don't want you to, get ahead of me here. So I decided, okay, I'll take it. I'm just blown away. I can't believe how much I would have missed out on. Just how different things are now. And honestly, our marriage is better because we have some common language, and we're both taking so much better care of ourselves. Our boundaries are better. So it was shocking to me that that I would have never done this. Never. And I'm so glad. It's so sad to me to think of what if I had missed it and had just, had read the books and stuff like that. It's because this really is so much more.
Well, and this is the first time that I'm hearing this, because I put you and your husband in separate groups because we needed to do that, and I don't talk to him about you and I don't talk to you about him. So this is the first time that I'm hearing that. So for somebody who is like you, that feels like, I've spent money on courses, I know about being an HSP, that's a lot of money. What would you say as far as the experience that what is it that they may not be seeing or taking into consideration? Because I have those same things too around spending money on courses. I've been there, I've done that. It's not worth it. It's expensive.
Right.
What would you share with somebody to maybe help them see it a little bit differently, or the value that they get? And as you can see, my dog's nose, she's on my lap, so that's Gracie's nose.
Is her name Gracie?
Gracie.
Gracie?
Oh.
Yeah,
So
she's
cute.
almost always on my lap. You
Yeah.
usually don't see her unless she sits up and then she tips her head back and then you see the nose.
Yeah. What I would say to people who don't want to do it or don't want to take the course, to spend the money, I would say think back to the first time you learned the term HSP and what it meant. And you had that like, oh my gosh, that's what it is moment. Take that. And if that was significant for you, then this course will blow your mind and change your life. If you're like, oh, I don't know if I'm an HSP or not, it's going to help you to really understand it and understand it. Like, because my husband is still not completely sure that he's an HSP. I think even if he isn't, he's still a very sensitive person, and this still helped him very much. But I definitely think, for me, speaking for myself, is when I learned the term, I was like, oh my gosh, that's it. And so the course gave me so much more than I was learning in the books, even though the information was there. It was just kind of being able to integrate it and figure out how to use that information in a way that, for me, became very life-changing.
Thanks for sharing.
I agree. And I think that once you, step in that arena of being okay with, I think we have a tendency to be, oh, you're too sensitive. Oh, I didn't, I was just joking. When you finally step out of that, label of being too sensitive, and you can say, no, this is actually a really wonderful trait, because you are so feeling and heartfelt. And I feel like it gives, being in this course gives us permission to stand up for who we are and what we're doing. And again, I keep going back to the support. It's just so huge to have other people out there rooting for you, bouncing stuff off one another. And you can't get that from just speaking. But it's not.
So you cut out on us, Shelly.
I know. Where did I cut out at? I'm sorry.
You're about a sentence or two behind what you said. I can't pick up where you were. Do you remember, Melissa?
It's gone now.
It's good stuff. What she said is it's good stuff.
It was good. Oh, but I do want to say another thing, of course, helped me with. Oh, you got it? Are you coming back?
No, go for it. Go.
I have one son that is very sensitive, which is probably very much like my husband. And the other one is obviously we took the test with both of them, and my youngest scored very high. It changed our relationship, because all of the stuff that I had been told by my family of origin that was not acceptable, even though I'm really trying to be very conscious, I was passing some of that on to him. It's really been a big change for me to be like, oh, that's his HSP trait, and that's okay. And to give him that room and to be who he really is, and to accept his sensitivity as a good thing. It's really calmed our relation. There's not that annoying little bit of tension there, even though I'm trying to love him on top of that. There's no having to love him on top of it anymore. I get it. And since I allow it in myself, I can allow it in him. And it's really blossomed. It's been lovely. And thank goodness he's 12. So I got this right before the teen years.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to respond to that, but Shelly, I want to go back to you before you lose your train of thought. Did you have something you wanted to share?
I think just kind of what Melissa said with her son, I feel that way with myself, that I have more understanding and compassion for myself, not beating myself up because I'm too sensitive and I take things too sensitively. Again, it just helps to know that I'm not the only one, and it's okay. It's like, I'm okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been really, really valuable to be a part of this in that way alone.
Did you ever feel like anybody in the group took up too much time, or you didn't get to have a chance to talk, or, that thing of like when someone talks, you're like, oh my God, so-and-so's talking again. Did you have any of that stuff go on in your group?
No, never. In fact, I think we bounced things off one another pretty smoothly, and we took time to listen to each other. And, maybe one meeting or one day, someone would be having a little bit more on their plate than the others, but it seemed to even itself out like the next week. So you didn't really feel like, it was ever being overran by someone.
Yeah, that's the benefit of being in a course with a bunch of HSPs. We're also super sensitive to each other, that I think every time somebody took up a lot of time, we were like, did I take up too much time? We're all like super on top of that.
And we use that as a reality check, because there were times when people were needing more time than others. And so, often what that person would share is like, I feel like I'm taking up too much time. Or I would pick up on like, I'm making up a story in my head that you feel like you can't share today because you shared so much last time. Yeah, that's how I'm feeling. Do you want to get a reality check? And so we did that a number of times. And are you able to share, about how that was, either if you were one of the people that received feedback about that, or the feedback that you gave around that? Somebody feeling like they were being too much.
We all had that. I think, and we all took turns at least once. And to me, that was so delicious to have that, because I've spent my whole life feeling like I'm too much. I need too much. I want too much. I want to give too much. It was always too much. So to be able to be around people who understood what that felt like, and for you to be able to be sensitive enough to pick up on that's what was happening, and to be able to put a voice to that was huge for me, because that's the voice I've been telling to be quiet for so many years. So for you to give that voice permission to be there and say, hey, I actually need to check in with that voice. That's a valid part of me. That's part of being sensitive. So I loved it. And when people would go off, and your interactions with them on the days that they needed more attention were always helpful.
I agree.
Yeah, I mean, we have this stuff that goes on all the time. I mean, I had something go on over the weekend with my son and his girlfriend were in town, and, what works for me doesn't work for everybody else. And so when I have to assert myself, I have this narrative of, everybody goes along because I'm the only one that it works for, and, nobody else likes it. And I named it. And so there's so much power in doing this work, because I don't want to walk around with that junk in my head. I mean, there are times when it's appropriate to say something, and times when you don't want to do that. You don't want to be saying it all the time. But there's just so much power when we can name what's going on. I'm feeling sensitive about time, and I want to keep these little blips short. So I want to wrap this one up.
Hey again. So I'm wondering what you thought about that. It's funny, between recording the intro and starting recording the outro, I thought I have a lot to say, and then I hit record and I'm like, what do I say? So I want to talk a little bit about what I've seen come from these groups. Initially, I really thought that it was the information that Jen and I put together in all of the categories. We cover 10 different topics. We talk about expectations and disappointments, mindfulness and self-compassion, identifying negative messages and turning them into superpowers, perfectionism, embracing our emotions, self-care is non-negotiable, boundaries, communication, authenticity, vulnerability, and creating a lifestyle that honors the HSP. So every week we have videos that Jen and I made that you watch ahead of time with an email. We've got links and questions. Where I found the greatest benefit in this group is I think so many of us have spent our lives being surrounded by people that are not like us. And we tend to feel like there's something wrong with us. We're too sensitive. We're too picky. We're too dramatic. And my guess is with COVID, many of us are feeling much more hypervigilant, much more concerned, much more cautious, much more conservative. And we may be bumping up against family members, friends, relatives that don't understand why this is really important to us. Being in a group with other HSPs. Now, just because we're HSPs, we don't show up in the world the same and we're not the same person, but to be in a group of other people that understand what it's like to have stronger reactions and responses to things, to feel things deeply, can be so incredibly healing and powerful. And because we often get messages from other people about what's wrong with us, because they're just not wired the same way that we are, we don't know how to respond and we internalize that. And what I see happening in the groups is people will ask for reality checks, and we talk about how you might be feeling different. And when that person can ask for a reality check, and I facilitate this, do you want to ask everybody how they're perceiving you? So far, everybody has always said, no, I love when you share. I learn so much. And usually the narrative that we have is, I talk too much. I'm taking up too space. I'm being too negative. I'm being too this, not enough that. And this sense of connection. And I would say for maybe 80% of the groups, they found a way to stay connected and continue to stay connected even after the group is over. And the support that's come out of it has just really been amazing. I can't guarantee who's going to be in the group and how people will connect. Generally, one person is the one that initiates some kind of connection, and there are enough people that are interested. I can't guarantee that. So I'm just sharing with you what I've seen happen. But being surrounded by a handful of people that get who you are, that have your back, that are caring and empathic, can be so healing. And one of the groups that was in the fall class, they still meet regularly. It's just, the connections are just beautiful. And I think that we're hungry and we long and we crave to be with people that get us. And so again, I can't guarantee who will be in the group and if you will have that type of connection, but just knowing that that's a possibility, if nothing else, for 10 weeks, being able to be with other people that are like you. This last course that we have, the last group this week coming up, we've incorporated what's going on with COVID. We initially talked about where we're at politically, what would be okay and not okay to talk about. Did people want to talk about what was going on? Because we can't ignore it and we're being impacted by it. For this group, it worked out that we all pretty much had the same values and have been able to incorporate what's going on with us personally, what's going on with COVID, what's going on in our state. And I think it's been incredibly healing and supportive, and it's so normalizing because, even in my own family, how I view COVID and how my family members view COVID is not the same. That can be really stressful. It can bring up that narrative of I'm being too much and maybe I'm being too picky and they're not being cautious enough. And this week I'm seeing much more irritability issues in relationships. This has been going on for a really long time, and there's not at this point, at least here in the States, a really clear end in sight. And so having a place where we can bring that. So we will do whatever works for the majority of the group members. And I'm very flexible about that, which is why we have the videos. You watch them before we come to meet in the group, and then we really have space in the group to talk about whatever's coming up for people. One of the other things that happens in the group that I don't think I've spoken to is we do a weekly check-in. And during that time, I will often share what's going on with me. And sometimes it's not pretty. And there's always this voice in my head that says, I should be a better role model, a better leader. I should be positive and happy, and I should be presenting differently. And what I found is when I allow myself to be authentic and real about what's going on, it gives other people permission to talk about the things that they're struggling with. I've talked about this before, that Glennon Doyle has talked about. She was with a group of moms and they said, how are you? And she said, parenting is hard. It makes me want to poke my eyeballs out. She kind of went on and gave an honest answer, and they all looked at her like she was crazy. And then she realized the answer was supposed to be, it's fine. And I think we get into this habit of people ask how we're doing and we go, oh, I'm fine, even though there's all this other stuff going on, because nobody really, oftentimes people really don't want to hear what is really going on with us. These groups are an opportunity to really be authentic and to show up. And if you're an introvert and you don't want to go deep and you don't want to share and you need time and space, there is no requirement or expectation. We all process differently. I think it can be scary for me. I've done groups before. I'm very reluctant to join them because I'm not sure if I'm going to be seen and heard. And I've had too many experiences where I felt like I haven't fit in and I haven't been honored. For the most part, I don't think that that's true in these groups. And to be able to have a place that is really designed for the HSP where you get to decide what works for you. Do you want to turn your video off? Do you need to get a snack? Do you need to take a break? Do you need to step away? Do you need to share? Do you need to not share? We don't have to try and figure out what the rules are like we do in the other part of the world where we have to be like the other 80%. It's really an opportunity to show up and be surrounded by people that, for the most part, get who you are. I think they're incredibly powerful. I love doing group work. I love seeing people have this opportunity to open up and grow and change and really start to embrace that how they show up is okay. Boundaries seem to be a huge thing. I'm going to be doing an episode here pretty soon. I think I'm going to call it Unapologetically Insensitive, How to Build Some Boundaries. It's not that you have to be insensitive to have boundaries, but I've just run across a couple of situations where I'm seeing where my belief that I need to be kind and generous in every situation is hurting me. And I really need to stand by what I know is true for me and to create some more boundaries. And I am going to be talking about that in another episode, but just to give you a little sneak preview. We have a great supportive Facebook group. It's closed. It's called Unapologetically Sensitive. There are a few questions to answer. If you want to join the group, I really appreciate each and every one of you. My hope is that during this challenging time, there is some amount of solace and comfort, that you're getting some nurturing and support, a little bit of time for yourself. Many of us are really taxed and pushed. Some people are thriving. I'm not I'm not one of them. Meaning that this is hard and I have a tender heart and I'm really feeling a lot of what's going on collectively in the world. I suspect for those people that say that they're not impacted and appear to not be impacted, that once COVID is over, within the next year or two, they may be starting to have symptoms that impact them. I don't know. I'm thinking maybe that's not an appropriate thing to say, but as someone who feels like the canary in the coal mine that feels things deeply, and when I look around and other people are like, "No, I'm fine. I'm doing great." It's hard for me to not feel like, well, what's wrong with me? And there's nothing wrong with me. I feel things very deeply, and so I may be the first one to be having a response to something, and for other people, maybe they will never have a response. Maybe some people are really doing great during COVID. That's not what I'm seeing, but this is just an area where I just got a little energy around it, if you can't figure that out. Anyways, I hope you are well. If you are interested in joining the Online HSP course or you want some information, you can go to unapologeticallysensitive.com, go to the HSP group page. My plan is to update the website. And like I said, my web host, it's taking them a little bit longer. So please be patient. You can still fill out a registration form. You can tell me whatever you need to in the comments. If you have a group of 6 to 8 people that you know all want to take the course, if I can, I'm happy to create a time slot that's for all of you and your friends. So just let me know. All right, I think that's it. I hope you are all doing well. You feel blessed, cared for. If you're angry, crabby, stressed, depressed, that's also okay too. All the feels are okay. Remember, sensitivity is nothing to apologize for. It's our superpower. Have a blessed day.